Welcome. Let me pop out the chat. And yes, this is my sculpting show. 3D sculpting for 3D printing miniatures. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that nonsense down there. Meanwhile, let's go ahead and see what we got with people coming in. Say hi to Shinju here. Yeah. And we are waiting on today's sculpt, or not today's, but this afternoon's, because there's two Patreon shows today. And it is 12:58. I'm a little early, so yeah. Just a few more minutes here, and we'll be kicking it. You know what I mean? And let me go ahead and we have a couple people watching, although I kind of think one of them might be me. Maybe. Well, like I said, we're just kind of waiting on our on today's patron so that we can sculpt his heavily armored dwarf. You know, real stumpy ankle basher type. Although not stumpy ankle basher, because that's a friend of mine's character and he's kind of copyrighted. Hello, William. And I see more people popping in. Dwarf time. Yeah. Fijian, are you AKA Kelrian? Aha. My brain gets mixed up with some of these, so many different nicknames that people have everywhere. I try to have the same nickname everywhere. It's Valendar most places. Okay. So, I'm going to go ahead and show a couple pictures that you sent me as concept art. Well, I'm going to show just the big one. Okay. And this takes a second here. Where did I put it? It's on my desktop, I think. Yeah, there he is. This is the initial concept art that he sent. Obviously, it's somebody else's work. It's copyrighted. I can't do exactly that. But I can come close. I can do something similar to it. I do have a question for you about the chest. Okay. And that is right here. The drawing, that's a surcoat over armor. That's cloth over the armor. Do you want to have a surcoat over the breastplate, or do you want to have a breastplate? You want the breastplate. Okay. And Alright, so... Alright. Let me go ahead and remove this. Alright, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and there we are. And I'm going to go ahead and do this. This is the base geometry I sculpt from. He's going to be a dwarf. First thing we're going to do is we're going to add on his shield. And when we take this into ZBrush, we're going to be sculpting on a bus and then adding detail to it. But his hammer doesn't fit any of the styles of hammer I currently have in this really long directory that my head is covering because of the way the window's shaped. So instead, we're in here, in 3D Studio Max. I'm going to import from, where did I put it? Props, old. And we're going to load in right-hand beaked axe, simply because it's about the right size and length and diameter. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to select the head of the axe and delete it. This way it's also going to be in the right position for when we load it into the hand of the figure. Now once again, I also can't do exactly like what he wants me to because it's copyrighted. I can do something similar, but not exactly. And the way I'm going to do similar is rather complex. I'm going to start off with a box. And let's go ahead and make it 2 width, height, and all that segments. Double poly, and we're going to center it. And then we're going to move it to negative 13.22 and up to 15.999. And as you can see right here, it's nicely centered on the handle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to select, well, first of all, we're going to duplicate this over here. And I can tell you right now, both of these are not broad enough to really print well. So we're going to now, would you rather have this more cartoony or, you know, more exaggerated or more, you know, more realistic in size? You want like a, you know, Warhammer Fantasy Battles Warhammer head that's bigger than your torso? Or would you have something that's still impressive but a bit more feasible? Which would you prefer? Hello, Kim! And how are we doing today? And hello, Narthor! Impressive but feasible. Okay, so something more along the lines of the Marvel version of Mjolnir. Okay. Alright, there we go. And real quick, while I'm thinking about it, let's remove the control backspace, that edge. We're going to grab here and bring it back a bit. Also, we need to go ahead and bring it a little bit closer to the top. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to select the vertexes here, 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 and here, and deselect the ones that are in the middle there. We're then going to shrink them down on the x-axis. Let's make it straight up 0%. Now we're just going to select all those and we hit weld. If you look down over here, it said, or down over there, it says 16 vertices selected. It should say 6, 7, 8 when I'm done. 8 vertices selected. That's exactly right. And that's going to give us that diamond shape on the center. Now, one thing we need to do that I'm thinking about, let's go ahead and, yeah, I need to do one last thing. We're going to delete half of it. And we're going to hide everything that we're not looking at. And I need to make certain on where these squares are edged. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in edges. Now we need to hide these. Hide selected. Now we go to cut. And we're going to cut from the middle corners. Here to there, to there, to there, and down to there. And you could see it as I added them. That looks better than it did. Now I'm going to unhide those faces I hid. And we're going to select everything except for the center vertex here. Now this should say 4, it says 5. That means we got one of them split, we hit weld, and it's 4. That's what we want. And we're going to mirror it that way. Attach here, and then select all ones in the center. It says 16, we hit weld, and it's 8. Now we're going to select all the edges, and we're going to give it a chamfer. That's too much. 0.01. Actually 0.001. And what we get is 1, 2. We have this as in the center of our hammer, a kind of a diamondy shape. Collapse all, and now let's unhide everything. And you can see it's got that shape to it. It's not as, it's more angular, not as graceful as the concept you showed me, but that's actually what we want here. Now here, we're going to make basically half of that. And this time it's going to be dragged over. Now before we drag it all the way over, let's look. These vertexes are at -18.353. So we're going to select these and move them to -18.353. Hey! Select. It currently says 13, but it's going to say 8. Weld 8. Oh, it says 9. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I see why. Because I forgot the one in the center on the face. Now we're going to hide everything else. We're going to select these faces and deselect the ones on the sides, and we're going to hide unselected. Excuse me. Yeah. And as you can see, we have problems there. So we're going to have to do the same thing, but we're facing a different way, so we got to switch from left to right view. And we're going to go to that. And we're going down to cut. Now, watch the shaded area when I do this. You can see how it's changing the structure as we go. Now, the reason for this is that every single... Oh, yeah. Ooh, massive frigate. Huh. Okay. Anyway. Oh, don't tell me it's doing this. It does this sometimes. There we go. What we're doing is every... Oh, no, not soft selection. Oh yeah, we got to be on plane. Okay. Unhide all. There we go. Effectively, well, wrong side. There we go. Every rectangle in a face, like the 4 squares on the front of this, is actually turned into triangles by the rendering engine and by the modeling engine. So if we don't tell it it splits here, it could split in any direction. Now once again, we're going to select all of them. We're going to chamfer at a 0.01. Actually 0.001. And we're going to mesh smooth it twice. Collapse all. And unhide all. As you can see, still hammer-like. But there's one thing I would like to do to it, just to make it a little bit more dwarven. We're going to bring the pivot back to the very beginning of it. And we're going to taper. And we're going to taper it like that. Make it just a little bit more shaped. Now, we want to make sure that this is going to mirror over here well, so we simply attach this, and then we select it again and detach it. And what that has done, that's moved its center point to the same spot, and we can just mirror it over. Now, with this one, we have to use Reset Transform. And you notice that when I did that, it went, it flipped black and white. We go underneath. Now we can see it's effectively inside out. So what we have to do is we have to click normal, and that flips it back out. The reason for this is when you mirror something, doesn't matter which edge you go from, like when I mirrored from here to here, it didn't make a mirror image and build it from scratch. It just took what was there and negative scaled it, effectively turned it inside out. Now the last thing we need on this hammer is we need the part that connects the 2 bits of the head with the part that connects to the handle. So, would you rather it be square, round, or diamond? I'm going to call you Feege, for as long as you're in this chat, because it's easiest. Okay. And meanwhile, batteries done. Time for new batteries. If you do anything that uses batteries, Don't have them just laying out. Keep them in the case. Safety. These things are miniature bombs. Imagine if all of the electricity in your batteries discharged at one moment. Think about how much energy that really is. Yeah. Always practice safety with batteries, even little watch batteries. That one over there, that's snoozing on the box I keep old filament in, ABS, not PLA, once knocked a watch battery that was in one of my transformers off of my desk into a change jar. It popped. It sent a couple coins flying and scared the bejesus out of the poor fuzzbutt. Okay, with square, we're going to the box, and this is as high as we can go. That's from here down to here. And now we're going to just grab it and drag it back over here just so it's just enough so that it intercepts. And you can see with square, we got the problem that it's I'm not sure about that. Are you sure square, not diamond? Diamond would make it thicker. It'd be easier to print, etc. Okay. What we do is we zoom out a little bit. I click this button here, and it clicks it to the 5-degree angle. So I'm going to rotate it to 45. So that's a boot operator on a 45. And then I'm just going to grab this and make it a bit bigger. That way. There. And as you can see, it fits nicely deep inside. Now the next thing we do is, of course, 222. Make sure it's centered with the rest of the head. We select the center piece, and we're going to attach that, that, and that. And we have our head, our hammer head. And now we're going to come back up to the front view, and we're going to rotate it 45 degrees this way, because that's how the arm is, and we want this to go slot right into the arm. So we select the whole thing, Z to pull. This is our hammer. There are many like it, but this one is yours. And we're going to file, export selected, wavefront OBJ, 3D printing home, meshes, free sculpt minis, and broadcast minis, new, dwarf, hammer, export, done, delete. Now, we're going to kick back over to here. We're going to load in a very basic warhammer into his right hand, not for the hammer, but for the hand pose. File, import. Whoops, nope. Broadcast miniatures, new, dwarf hammer, accept. And we're going to click and drag it onto right hand. And there we have the hammer in scale to the figure. One thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to the back view. We're going to go ahead and manipulate the center of the hammer. And then a right view. Slide it back into the hand. Now, is that still too big for your dwarf? To give you an idea, when I turn him into a dwarf, this is his proportions as a dwarf. Is the hammer still too big for you? Okay, now, next thing that we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and hide the shield and the hammer. And we're going to load in a bit of clothing on him. To be exact, we're going to load in the bottom of a tunic. We are going to drag that down longer in ZBrush. That will become, like I said, it'll become the bottom of the tunic. We're also going to load in that which smooths out the chest for a breastplate. Let's go ahead and load in the parts for a gauntlet and the parts for what are called sabatons. The pauldrons we'll do later, once we're actually sculpting. Now, we're going to hide the various bits here, and we're going to get working on the pose. Now, I don't want to pull up Discord right now because it'd be advertised to everybody. But do you have a pose preference? Resting the hammer on his shoulder, which means we actually do need to bring the hammer visible. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go into couple of my poses, existing poses, and we're going to tweak it. You got to have the figure selected before you click a pose. Alright, that's too much. Now I'm going to take the arms and the neck, head, and parts of the head. And I'm going to 0 all of the rotations. So I've got a kind of a resting lower body, but we can actually tweak that just a little bit more. We're going to grab and pin this foot. And then we're going to pin this foot. We're going to select these shins and lock them so that they can't go side to side. Now, we're going to drag it down just a little, and then we're going to rotate it. Oh, wrong way. Oops. Just a little bit. And now we're going to the front view. And we are going to select this foot, and we're going to slide it out and bring it up a bit. No, don't accidentally hit right click. And I'm going to the right hand view. We're going to slide this one back a little and this one forward a little. So we go back to our perspective view. It's pretty much a standing pose, but it's a bit more active of a standing pose. Now we're going to side the torso and the chest. Then I'm going to bend the torso forward a bit, or the abdomen forward a bit. Now, once, as we did before, so that we can get our, oh, first let me unpin all. As we did before to get the hand pose proper, we're going to load in yet another, let's go ahead and load in the mace in the right hand. We're going to select the mace and delete it. And we're going to take the hammer and we're going to slide it forward a bit in his hand, so we got a bit more room. And we're going to select this. We're going to bend it down. We'll go forward. And we're going to twist the collar. Then we're going to bend the arm and twist the shoulder and kind of make it go a bit more side to side and a bit out. Then we're going to side to side the hand. That's a bit too much, so we're going to untwist the shoulder, or the collar rather. I'm going to twist out the arm a bit more. I'm going to bend that. Then what we're going to do is we're going to grab this arrow. Pull it out. Oh, we got side to side going. We don't want side to side. We're going to bend it a bit more just to... Yeah, the problem with dwarves is their arms are so short and stubby, they have a hard time doing things like this. Let me go ahead and do a cheat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this upper arm. I'm going to X scale it just a little bit longer. And this arm is going to X scale just a little... That part of the arm is going to X scale a little bit longer. We're also going to cheat and move the joint center for the wrist. And we've got to leave room for where the pauldron's going to be. The other option here is we can bring it back on the side to side. Bend it back down a bit more. Untwist, unbend somewhat here. Then we just go ahead and put it back this way a little, and then this way a little. And the reason for this is we're going to actually twist the fingers to make it fit. And then unbend it. Now, because of pauldrons, we're going to remove some of this side to side, because it's got to rest on the pauldrons, not on the actual figure. And then we're going to go ahead and delete the shield and reload it. So it'd be shield round. Actually, I know one thing to do. Parameters. Let's bend this back down a bit. And unbend from here. Then take that forearm and twist it a bit more that way. Yeah. Now, is the shield going to be down, or is it going to be raised up in a defensive stance? As you can see, it's a rather hefty shield. Okay. Well, what we're going to do to turn him to the left is we're going to turn at the abdomen and chest by doing that. And then like that. Like that, pretty much, right? Looking to the left. All right, we're going to bend his arm a bit. And then his shoulder is going to bend and twist. I can shrink the shield if you want me to. Oh, the miniature's left. Okay, well, that's just not very difficult to undo. Like that. So do you want the shield shrunken? Okay. That's a bit more reasonable targ size for a dwarf. It's still a bit large, but it's a bit more reasonable. We could go smaller if you want. And actually, there's one other thing we do have to do. We have to unrotate it a little bit this way. Room for the upper armor. Also, I'm going to assume that we're going to be closing the mouth. Okay, well, now if we look at the whole thing combined, I'm thinking that we don't need the gauntlets. That's mitten gauntlets. And if we want to have armor on his hands, we want it to be regular. Alright. Another thing we're going to have to do real quick. I have to rotate the hammer that way. And move it a little bit that way. There we go. That is the current state for this miniature. Now, obviously, he looks like he's got a towel around his waist, a wax plaster on his chest, and some bandages on his ankles, but that will look different once we get to sculpting. So we're good for the basic figure, aren't we? Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to hide the hammer, shield, skirt. We're going to leave the breastplate and sabatons on. We're hiding the skirt because we're going to need to stretch it down a bit. And I see a problem with the shield. His hand's poking completely through his leg. So what we're going to do is we're going to unbend it slightly and then twist it just a little bit more. Yeah, we're going to hide the shield again. And this is the basic pose he's in. This is where we're going to get all his clothing and armor from. So File, Export. Oh, no, this is not. There we go, Broadcast. New. Dwarf body. Accept. I'm going to hide him, hide the sabatons and the breastplate, and make the shield and hammer visible. File, Export. Dwarf props. Accept. Hide them, and make the tunic skirt visible. Now, one thing we're going to do, I just remembered that I forgot to do here. We select. Let me go ahead. We select the right thigh, and we see that the twist is negligible. We're fine. We select the left thigh. The twist is 6.48. So we go to the left thigh of the skirt, negative 6.48. That relaxes it a little. Now, File, Export, Dwarf tunic. And now we click over ZBrush. Import. No. Broadcast miniatures. New. Dwarf body. And we draw him into the scene. We then hit Edit and Frame. Zoom out a little. And before we add anything, there's a couple things we do need to fix. We need to smooth. Whoa, that's way too strong. I forgot to shrink it down. We need to smooth out the breastplate area because it's designed for a much different. We need to smooth out the back because he's going to have a back plate. We're going to smooth out the shoulders because that's what we're going to use to make the pauldrons. And that's good for now. We're going to go ahead and append the other parts before we get to doing anything else. I'm also going to assume you want a rocky base. Is that correct? You want a base that looks like it's kind of rocky. You could have that, you could have tiled. Yeah, bass. You know, it's all about that bass, bad song. Or overplayed song. It's not really a bad song, it just got overplayed. can see it's kind of made to look like rocks, so we're going to export this. Dwarf base. Accept. Okay, and now we're going to append polymesh. Import dwarf base. And here is what we got so far. We're going to go back to the body, we're going to hide everything else. And we're going to first subdivide it until it's smooth, right around 1 point, or in this case 2.6 million. Delete lower. So that's its current stat. And now we're going to dynamesh it 768 with a blur of 0. Undo the dynamesh bit. And we're going to make the mouse a little bit smaller, hit space and or hit shift and use that to smooth over the seams of where these various bits we added on were. Okay. And then the same thing is going to go, well, with a smaller mouse, going to go down here. And on the foot, so that it actually does look like plates. And here, and here. And we're smoothing out basically the divider between plates and legs. The reason for this is we will be making something similar for the top of these calf plates, then something similar for thigh plates. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and draw on, well, first thing we're going to do is dig out the tablet, because this is where this comes into play. Alright, it's currently at 777,000. We're going to subdivide that just to make it a little bit easier to draw on. ZBrush doesn't just let you draw on the mesh. It colors and selects vertexes. We're gonna give them kind of Space Marine-y knee pads. Since he's just standing, and it's okay, and then we're going up to Subtool, Extract, 0.02, Accept. We draw on it to unmask, we draw on the body to unmask. We're then going to go ahead and dynamesh this at 256. And turn off dynamesh, give it a divide or two until it looks moderately smooth. And just kind of use the smooth brush on the surface just to make it a little bit flatter. Not a lot flatter, because you do want to be able to just sculpt away on it, but anyway, that's that. Now we go back to him. And what we're going to do is we're going to select, well, under, down here, like this. A nice little gap. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. For those of you who don't know, right now The Chicago Museum of Natural History is having a field day by having a series of tweets about a fictional game of D&D between the exhibits, with Sue, the most complete Tyrannosaurus skeleton ever, as the game master. Yes, it's like if Night in the Museum was about geeks like us. Okay, so what we're doing here is this is the top of the calf armor. Okay, now we're going to extract them at the same size. Except draw on that, and then decimation at 256. Now we're going to go ahead and subdivide it. What we're going to do is I'm going to use the inflate tool, shrink it down a little. We're going to kind of give it a bit of a trim on the bottom. Oh, that didn't work. Reason for this is that not only is, it's trim, a place for someone if they want to paint a slightly different color, it also helps balance out the edge on the bottom of this. And we're going to do the same thing up above. And we're coming down there and coming across the back. No, we're not, because that one didn't follow very well. There. Same thing over here. We're gonna just kind of come down and around. Come down and around. And come down to there. Every time you draw in ZBrush, it takes where you last ended up as the new center. This is useful in many situations, annoying in just as many. Frame out. And we can see he's definitely got full calf down armor. Yes. But now he needs thigh armor. Fortunately, we don't need to do the top of the thigh armor because it's going to be covered. And actually, we really need to bring this down because the concept art you gave me, well, it was considerably longer than this tunic. So let's go to move. And the first things we're going to do before we pull this down is we're going to go ahead and pull in these. Whoop. Pull in the tops of these so that it'll blend better when it comes time. You can see right here we got a bit of an edge. Okay, now we're going to do it from behind because that's where it's going to start. Okay. And the next thing we're going to do is going to go from the bottom, and with about that much selected, we're going to pull out so it ends up hanging pretty straight. Now let's go to subtool, and what we do is we take this and we zoom up a couple, and then we merge down. And we're going to dynamesh it. And as we did before with the legs, we're going to smooth out the top, because that represents the seam where it's becoming one with the body, and it becomes a solid piece from the body. And we're going to smooth over this bit a little bit more because we need it a bit smoother over here. We're also going to smooth out down here because we've got a bit of a sharp bend in the front. Oh. And we got to do a little bit more. Sorry about that. I'm starting to get a little bit of a sinus headache. Okay. And down here. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make pauldrons. Before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and smooth out the top of this arm because it's got a bit of an issue right here. So we're going to smooth that out. And right here. We're also going to smooth out right here. Now, the existing pauldrons in the concept art have a high peak on them. What we're going to do is we're going to take this into 3D Studio Max to give it the peak. And what we're doing is we're not only drawing on where the pauldrons will be, we're also using this to give it a bit of a sharp edge in some areas and not in others. Okay. Frame. Now what we're going to do here, we're going to go ahead and extract, just like we have in the past. But this is going to be 0.04 thick. Except undraw. I'm going to hide everything that's not these. No, okay, we need to deselect those. So all we have is this. And we're going to go to, where is it? We're gonna do it that way. We're then going to split unmasked parts, take those unmasked parts and delete. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to simplify it a lot. We're not going to dynamesh it. We're going to Z-remesh it. And what that does is it redoes the topology and is sacrificial of detail. Now that's a little bit too this until we get a very simple shape. One more. Okay. Dwarf pauldrons. And then we're going back over to 3D Studio Max and we're going to import from Broadcast Miniatures New Dwarf pauldrons. Yeah, Kim. That sounds like a whole lot of fun. Now what we're going to do is going to be very simple. We're going to add a shell, but we're going in instead of out because this is the outside surface. We're going to make it 1.5. This looks almost identical to what we had before in ZBrush. But because of the way it's this works, I can create that ridge a lot easier in 3D Studio Max. come in here. If we look at it, yeah, that's doing pretty good. So we're going to extrude, we're going to change it to an edible poly. We're going to extrude of a 0.001 twice. And then we're going to bring it out a bit. And then 0.001. We go ahead and we undo edge faces. And we mesh smooth. And I forgot to sharpen the edges from having been expanded. Yeah, there we go. Ring selects everything in a ring parallel to the edge you selected. And we're going to connect them with two segments 99% of the way apart. That gives us a nice hard edge around those things. Now we hit mesh smooth once, twice. Collapse all. And we're going to export these back out. Done. Delete. And we go back into ZBrush, and with the pauldron selected here, we import Dwarf Paulds, open, and they're suddenly replaced with that. We undo that. We have our pauldrons. Doing some detail work on it later. We go back up to him. We're going to add in what's known as lames. Has nothing to do with being incapable of walking. It's additional plates that come out from under the pauldrons. He doesn't have much in the way of upper arm armor, but he does have these lames. Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to basically cut the lames into hexagon, into octagon. Well, angled figures. Oh, wait a minute. I still got the... Yeah, I have to redo that entirely. I forgot to notice that I'd already had... Yeah, we're gonna cut down. This arm. And these are going to be extruded out, but not quite as thick. We're going to extract them out at 0.02. 0.02. And that's the secondary plate of the pauldrons. And these, I'm going to go back up to him, draw back to them. Geometry. Dynamesh at a 256. Divide. Lower. And merge down. Because And by hiding the hands, we're going to make it easier to get to the torso. Let's go ahead and hide the upper arms too. And hide that. This lets us get to the torso for the breastplate. Now, I'm going to have to go ahead. I've got something hitting. I'm going to have to go ahead and come back to here for a moment. Because privacy reasons. I got to find out what's going on here. Okay, nothing important. And we go back here. ZBrush. Now, we're going to make the mouse a little bit bigger. And actually, the first thing we're going to do is the belt. Because that belt is also used to hold up the hip plates. We're already at 209. This might be a late one. Okay. That's the belt. We're going to extract the 0.02. Accept. Draw. Draw. Go to belt. Dynamesh at 128. And subdivide it a couple times. But before we actually use those subdivisions, we're going to shrink the mouse a little. We're going to hit smooth on the inside of this bend, because that'll help straighten it up and to appear more flat. More like a belt and less like a sash. Okay. And then we're going over here and changing to insert a gemstone as his belt buckle. And let's zoom out just a little so we can see. Okay, yeah, it'd be about here. Okay. And now we're going to split unmasked, just so that we can take this one separately and subdivide it a little. Okay, now the next thing we could do really are the breastplate and the hip plates. Which one should you want to do first? Oh, no, that's breastplate, hip plates. Well, breastplate, hip plates, bracers, and facial hair. The breastplate. Okay. Now, the design style of the rest of the armor is a little different. It's very rectangular, octagonal, and combination thereof. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off. I'm going to have an octagon shape coming down from the shoulders. Well, comes down here. That's the under chest plate. Yes, contrary to what you see in a lot of miniatures and a lot of art, the upper part of the breastplate is under the lower part. Okay. Now, it's going to come around and connect to the back plate like that. This is going to come down lower. Actually, it's gonna. We're actually going to have them overlap. Alright, so we're going to extract that at 0.02. Accept, draw, draw. And then we're going to dynamesh this at 256. And subdivide it a couple times. Now we're going to hide it. We don't want to see it because it would influence where we put the waist plate. The waist plate is going to hang just above the belt. It's got its own attraction area. And in the front, it's going to come up, straight in, real close. A lot sharper of an angle. And come down. Okay, when it comes time to decorate this breastplate and the waist plate, would you prefer angular abstract stuff or actual Viking runes? No, in the back it's not going to go up as quite as high. We need to hide the belt just for a second to clean this up. Alright, there we go. That's that. And then we're going to extract this at 0.04. And accept, draw, draw. This is where the breastplate is. Now, one thing we're going to do while we got this, we're going to take the waist plate, and we're now going to dynamesh it at 256. And subdivide it a couple times. But before we leave, we're going back to our slash tool. We're going to turn off lazy mouse. And bring that intensity down to about 16. Oh, 1. Actually, no. What we need here is we need our orb cracks brush. And let's zoom in real quick, because what we're going to do is we're going to make side plates separate from the... Oh. Not enough. Make it a little bit bigger and a lot more intense. And we're going to start from the bottom. Yeah, there we go. just to see how well it works with the shoulder pads. Works pretty well. Now it's bracers and hip plates. Angular abstract. Okay. Just a second here. Oh. I've been working all morning, so that's why I'm a little bit brain fried. Okay, the hip plates are going to be pretty easy. Need to hide this hand. And forearm. And that's it. Now, the hip plates are going to be hanging here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off. Actually, let's go ahead and merge some. No, we can go ahead and take care of it. We're going to start off. We're going to make the big one. Oh, no, the small one. I'm going to fill that in, and then we're going to cut here and cut here. And we're going to hide the belt so that we can cut the top accurately. We just want to try and kind of use it as a guide though, so on this side, yeah, draw across. Okay, we're going to hide the belt and kind of clean that up. We're going to clean that up and then cut here and cut here. Alright, now we're going to extract that at 0.04. Draw. Draw. Make the belt visible just so we can see it's hanging on the belt. And then we're going to dynamesh it 256 as usual and subdivide it a little. What that does, the whole subdivide, dynamesh and subdivide, what that does, that makes it easier for us to sculpt on later, because otherwise those sides are long, thin, single polygons instead of an array of square polygons. And then now here, we're going to draw on the second. We're only going to have a dual lame on this. I'm not going to have to worry about cleaning up under this because it won't poke out from under. And then clean up that edge and corner. That's that. Now on this side. Okay. Now these will be extracted at 0.02. So that way they appear to be overlapped by the ones above them. And once again, before we do anything, we go to geometry, decimation 256, and we subdivide it a couple times. Delete lower, and now we're going to merge down. The same way we're going to take the we're not going to do that with the breast and back and belly plate, because we're going to be doing some detailing on there that needs it access. But now it's time for the forearms. I'm going to go ahead and hide all of the other bits and pieces that we've added to our buddy. We're going to draw just to make sure that we have no. And now the bracers. Now what's going to happen is we're going to have two plates. We're going to have this, which is going to be the leather part of the bracer holding it onto the guy's arm. Okay. Yeah, this is going to be the... Oh, dang it. Shrink the mouse, Control Alt, and just start erasing that. Yeah. We're going to extract this at 0.02. Accept. Draw. Draw. And this is going to be dynameshed at 128. But that makes the edges softer. It makes it less metal and more cloth or leather. Now we're going to hide it. No, I said hide it. And we're going to draw on an octagon onto the back of the forearms. The idea being that this is a plate held on by the leather straps. Again, I can't do exactly what you gave me because it is, somebody else's artwork. But I can do something inspired by and in the vein of. And this is going to be Now the way you do this is that you hold down Control to draw on the mask, and it's the mask that gets extracted out. Okay, now this is going to be extracted out at 0.03. Draw. Draw. Frame. Aha, I missed some. Yeah, I missed something here. Select that. Split masked parts. Select that piece. Delete. Okay. There we go. Now. We're going to dynamesh those. At 256 because they're metal. Subdivide it a couple times. And once again, make everything visible. It looks like about the only thing we're really missing, besides detailing the weapons and detailing everything else, is the hair and beard. Pretty heavy armor, huh? Now just to see how he looks with his gear. So what do you think so far? Excellent. I'm assuming that you haven't changed anything. Now, I like that it rests right on the bar of the... And the shield rests right on the pauldron without us ever measuring it. We never measured that, but it rests right on the top of this, and this rests right against the pauldron here. So let's go ahead and hide the props and base. And it's time to go ahead and do his head, his hair. Which, we know what kind of beard he's going to have. But that leaves us with another question. And hopefully you'll be able to answer it. What kind of hair does he have? In the past, I've handled braids with a pre-made braid object. This one, I'm going to show how to do it with a different tool. It's going to be easier for doing different styles of braids with that rather than having to make an object for every style. Okay, now what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and extract it at 0.03. That looks like a lot more than it should be, but that's because we're going to be bringing in the mustache and that. Go to Geometry, Decimation 28. And smooth out this. No. One hit on the side. Yeah, we're going to use the move tool for this. Which means we need to make it even bigger. It's going to eventually merge with the hair when I get to doing that. Let's make this smaller and blend in, or not blend in, but pull in that and these. And then we're going to very lightly brush over the top of this part of the beard and this part of the stash. Now, that's just the general where is it located. We're now going to subdivide it a couple times. And we're going to basically drag it out. No max, we're going to have one braid. I don't have time to do all of the hair as braids. Clay buildup brush is what we're going to be using. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of center on his face and go back. We're going to build up down here mostly. Okay? I'm going to have the intensity up pretty high. No, that's not doing it right. That's... Bring that back down. Now bring it... Okay. Now we're going to kind of just smooth this out just a little. And we're going to subdivide it a couple... let me close this. Yeah, subdivide it one more time. Delete lower. Dynamesh. There. Now we're going to move. We're gonna... Because now I can grab enough of it without grabbing the whole chin. We're going to decide. We're going to grab it and we're going to pull down. We're also going to kind of pull like that. We're then going to go to inflate. I'm going to make sure I don't have it masking back faces. I don't. Good. And I'm going to gently start inflating the whole beard area here. Make it so it'll be big and bushy when it comes time. Okay. Now, we're going to subdivide it a few times. Looks smooth, and we're going to hit with Dynamesh. That's to make sure that these polygons are the same size as these. Now we're going to subdivide it. Delete lower, and we're going back to play build up, we're going smaller. And we're taking away the alpha. And what we're going to do is we're going to start drawing the bits for the braid. Actually, I need to those first couple are too long, so we're gonna bring it down and then you can see it's already looking like a braid from sitting back and looking at it. And we're going to kind of draw in here. And then we're going to use this as kind of like the tail end of the braid. We're also going to use the very faint smoothing just to smooth this out a bit. See, just alternating little diagonal lines, and it looks like a braid. Now we're going to kind of outline the braid itself. And we got the braid, and now all we got to do is the rest of the beard. Sorry, I got another quick. Okay, you want a man bun. Okay. So let's go ahead and go back to ZBrush. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use the slash tool to go ahead and draw on the rest of our locks for the beard. Beards are curlier than regular hair. As someone who has one, I can verify this. So the bushier we make it look, the more realistic it'll be. Okay. Now we're going to switch to add, but drop it down to 6. Yeah. We're just going to go lightly over the edges of each of these locks to kind of make them pretty blatant, make them sharp edged. The reason for this, I've said it many times, but there's always someone new. The reason we make the edges of the locks sharp is they'll be easier to dry brush. They'll really snag the paint off of those brushes when you're trying to just, give it a bit of a dry brush. And as you can see, it's already looking all really good as a beard. It's looking nice and bushy and curly. So there we go. Now when we zoom out to roughly how big the figure will be, the locks are, and select just the heads so we can zoom in. Okay. Now, deselect anything that's on there. And what we're going to do is we're going to start from here. We're coming back like that. Actually, no, we need to start off with a smaller brush. And come arc forward. The reason for that is because, replicate the slightly receding hairline. And then here. Let's follow along this little seam at the base of the skull. A little bit bigger brush to fill in the gap. So, a friend of mine, their oldest son is on a gap year. And he's in Europe. Well, he was expecting food in Spain to be similar to food in Mexico, and it wasn't. Even to the point where he got sick. And he was worrying about having to go to the hospital when he discovered that there was actually a doctor on staff at the hotel he was staying at. Exactly. And this was a complete shock to him. But the doctor was understanding and said, I understand. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. And we're going to extract it at 0.02. Because we don't need it as thick as we got from the other. Except, draw, draw. And under geometry, we dynamesh it. And we're going to very gently just stroke over this. This is going to blend in there. We're going to stroke over this. It's going to blend in on that. And a very slight blend over the front of it. And a very slight blend over the ear. Now we're going to divide it a couple. Well, actually, we need to do a little bit under just one pass over here. Now we're going to divide it a few times. Lower. And we're going to draw on back here that. We're going to extract it out with double turned off and at 0.06. Accept. Draw, and draw. Now when we dynamesh this, we're going to dynamesh it at 64. And we're going to very lightly hit these corners here. Not a happy camper right now. I think I'm starting to get a migraine. I'll finish this, but... Okay. Now we're going to inflate. Make this a little bit bigger. Turn it down a lot. Yeah. And we're going to inflate back here. we're going to subdivide it a couple times. Delete lower. And then we're going to the hair. And we're going to start drawing in the locks that are pulling back towards the bun, which is going to start with one coming back from here. No. Now we're going to switch back to add. We're going to drop down to about 8, and we're going to gently go over these bits. Locks. And now underneath. One here, and one here. And that's the hair itself. Now I just need to do the bun. And we're going to give it one more level of the subdivision. Because I figure 38,000 should be enough just for a couple. We're going to just do a little bit of Z-subbing. We're going to come in. That's too much. It needs to be 15. Normally, freehanding a new hairstyle isn't the best idea in the world, but you know, I am kind of stretched for time. It's already almost 3 o'clock, which is the normal bye-bye time for this. And it's my own darn fault that it's this much time, because I decided to get fancy. And I paid for it with the pauldrons. Okay. Now,
I get what are called acephalgic migraines from time to time. And what that does, alright, let's go ahead and blend in the hair pieces so it's all one wig. He's pretty handsome for a dwarf, isn't he? Alright, I'm gonna have to only do basic trim on the plates. I don't really have the time or the energy. I can do some more. I can put like a symbol on the belly. Alright. And coming around. And let's get to orb cracks. And we're going to draw on a very large rune. Okay. Do you have a 2 or 3 letter word or initials that you would mind having on his belly? It's going to be done rather geometrically, but it's still going to be dug in. And it's just going to give me an idea for shapes to do. Oops. PB. Okay. So it's going to be basically the shapes are going to actually we need to make this layer at 72. Whoop. And then the top part. There we go. Now the last thing to do I've got 2 last things to do. First, I need to put scales, or 3 last things to do. Scales on the tunic. And the way we handle that is import alphas. And do I have scale? Yes, I do. We're going to use this scale. And we're going to change this to drag dot. Make it big. Add. Make it a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger. And we're going to flip it vertically so I can drag it into position. Okay, so that's... I just kind of draw them into position. It's not hard, but it is a little tedious. You gotta have your hands practically hovering over Control Z in case you get a misplaced scale. That was pure coincidence, I swear. And occasionally have to do that to make sure that you can start where you want it. And got the bottom row down, so we bring in the next row. And then come in and continue on the next row. And there's the scales in the front, and now for the scales in the back. There. That's the scales. Now it's going to be hands and shield. Which means the first thing we need to do is we need to select this, and we need geometry. We need to decimation it 512 after we subdivide it a couple times. And then what we're going to do, we're going to make layer, we're going to take away the alpha, and we're going to make this bigger, about there. That's good. That's a bit too high though. Control Z. Let's drop this down to about 50. Or about 50, I should say. Can I see the... yeah. Oh, I see one thing I forgot to do. Turn off Lazy Mouse. Still too high for what I'm doing. There we go. I'm gonna shrink the mouse and give it a bit of just a faint smoothing around the edge. This is the boss on the shield, because we are now going to take, and in the center we're going to use inflate, and we're going to inflate here. That's too small. mini. And then we're going to smooth out the top of it. Well, let's bring this up to 100 and smooth out the top of it. And there's our boss. Now, we're going to add some rivets. These rivets almost certainly won't be seen very well on FDM, but they will on a resin print. And it's, oh, way too small. Let me make it. There we go. Oh, those are too small. Is that good? No. That's good. And there we have the shield. And now I need to detail the hands. I refine them basically, adding knuckles and things like that. There we go. Now we're going back to inflate. Let's say 14. Intensity of 10. And the first thing we're going to do is here on the inner thumb. Okay, now a little bit of smoothing there. Alright, now let's make sure I've got this the right size. I need a little bit bigger. Or is that too small? Alright. There we go. That should do it. Knuckle, 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 knuckle. Tendon, 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 tendon. And then smooth it. Then knuckle here, knuckle here. And just once again just kind of make it follow the finger. And then smooth each finger. Or I should say phalange, not finger. Don't have to do it too well because this is a dwarf. And then just to kind of help emphasize the bend of the wrist. Okay, frame out. And now we got to do something with the hand holding the shield. It's not as hard because you don't have as much visible. You got to do just a couple things with it. Shrink it. Let's inflate there. And then let's just kind of inflate up here. And then finally, well, smooth there. Rotate. We're just going to do these knuckles here. I'm just going to take a run over them. Okay, we need to select that shield. And smooth out right here. Okay, now frame. And let's make the base visible. Frame again. Zoom out to about print size, and yep, everything looks really nice. Very clearly a heavily armored dwarf with some interesting geometric engravings on his breastplate. So, we scroll up to our dwarven body. Is this good for you? Feeds, is this good for you? Excellent. So what we're going to do then we're going to go ahead and merge down until he's one single item. One single tool, I should say. And there we go. There is our dwarfy. However, he is not ready to print. The reason is he is too high resolution. He's 3.888 million polygons. He's also multiple intersecting shells. Well, that's part of what Dynamesh does for us, is it fuses them all into one shell. That is now, instead of 3.888 million polygons, it's only 2.612. I got rid of some of our polygons, and like I said, it fused it into one item. But we need it to be even fewer, because most slicers don't like 2 million polygons. 2.5 especially. So we're going to Z plug in, and I click this little circle here, and it appears on the side. I go to Decimation Master. Now we're going to make it 100,000 polygons because it's got the detail in the scales. So I've got my custom kilo points at 50. That's 50,000 points. Since it comes out as all triangles, that's 100,000 triangles. Or so. Plus or minus about 1 to 2%. So I click, I undo Dynamesh. I go ahead and, just for luck, smooth a patch of the base, which is already smooth. And I hit, bring it down a little, make sure it's entirely in the thing, and I hit custom. Now let's hope this orange line goes all the way across to the right, so I don't have to stop it and restart it after doing a tiny, 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 indistinguishable little tweak. I have a personal preference to plain flat shields, or shields with only the types of details that shield would have, because things were painted on the shields in real life, so why not have things like coat of arms painted on a flat shield or bent shield in the miniature? I understand it's for people who aren't quite as good at the freehanding, but if you can do the freehand, do it. It looks more like it's part of the figure instead of something that's nailed to his shield. The shield still looks usable instead of being, okay, yay, it did it great. Let's see, we're going to have how many 1,000 polygons? Up here is what we're watching, right up here. And we have 100,098. this is how he looks at 100,098 triangles. Do we have a name for this dwarf? I know. My cheat is actually sitting on my table right now. The really long bristled brushes. These, they hold a lot of paint, and you can, they're called liner brushes. Halleck, like Gurney Halleck from Dune. But anyway, we're going to export this under. Actually, this should be under Patreon Minis, new Halleck Armored Dwarf. And there we go. So now, it is 3:15. I have less than 2 hours and 45 minutes to eat dinner, take a nap, and otherwise get prepared if I don't devolve into full-blown migraine. If I do, then I'm going to have to go ahead and ahead of time apologize to someone who was supposed to be done tonight that I've been putting off for weeks because every time he's come up, I hit a migraine. I'm sorry. Sorry. But yeah, that was Halleck. Halleck will not be available to anyone but you. You. Yes, you. Until next week. And I need you to go ahead and private message me your email address on Discord, so that I can email you the STL and a render of the miniature. Okay? That reminds me, I also need to put up last week's 2 sculpts into the Patreon vault. Okay. Meanwhile, it is 3:20. I'm going to hold up my hand here. I'm going to start counting down from 5 to 1. When I hit 1, I'm going to say something completely and utterly goofy as usual. And I'll be logging out. Now, one thing to remember, or several things to remember. 1, any cubic photon. Easy mode for miniatures. Number 2, like and subscribe if you haven't already. I am 2 people away from 200. Yeah, I know, it's not huge, but hey, it's a milestone for me. And don't forget the bell thingy, in case I do something random like, oh hey, I think we're going to sculpt on Friday this week. And, yeah, I still need to go in there and use the gear oil I got that I was told to use on the Z shafts and change the FEP film. Yeah. And then I'll be printing out my other nice stuff. So, yeah. Alright, so. Countdown and goofiness. Okay. We're going to start here with a 5, a 4, 3, 2, and 1. Yes, you have won absolutely nothing except for the pleasure of hearing my voice imitating a typical radio announcer. Goodbye.